Casey Thompson told us yesterday that he was the most valuable player of this Nebraska football team.
You are Locked On Huskers, your daily podcast on the Nebraska Cornhuskers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, I'm Derrick Pearson from 93.7 The Ticket in Lincoln, America, home of the Fighting Huskers of the University of Nebraska. And yes, that is a phrase that I'm going to be using the rest of this podcast because it was identified yesterday that that's a part of the personality of this group. I want to thank you for making and allowing Locked On Huskers and Locked On Go Big Red to be your first watch, first listen each and every single day. We're thankful and grateful for the folks at Locked On Sports for allowing us to bring this content to you on a daily basis, and it's greatly appreciated. I want to say to you, thank you to the folks at BetOnline for what they do. They provide information. Look, this is where the game begins. So whether it's you like odds, you're an odds person. Do you need props within the game, things to move you along the way? They've got whatever you want. So whatever way you want to be more curious about the game, BetOnline has it for you. We've already got numbers for next week. A couple of things. First things, of course, Nebraska as they head they turn their heads towards the Minnesota Gophers. Minnesota favored by 11, and the over/under 47 points. There's a lot to digest there, and so we will. But we'll look back before we go forward, and we'll focus this podcast on what happened at Memorial Stadium Saturday between the Huskers and Illinois. A couple of things we found out, and a couple of more questions popped up. Take a moment now, if you would, please. Our subscribe numbers are good. They should be better. Husker Nation, look, I know this about you. When you're getting content that you're in for, you guys show up. So it's time to rally your fans and friends and get them over to the Locked On Huskers podcast and get that information. So first question, the lead story is that this team fought. But what we also found out is they fight harder and they fight better when their leader is playing. Now, that's the case for most teams, and most teams will tell you there's no alibi for the fact that a player goes down. It's next man up, next Husker up. That's the expectation. That's the way you prepare. That's how business is being done, especially in the Big Ten and, more importantly, in the Big Ten West. And Nebraska has pitched and pointed that, listen, we need to stand up for each other. There's no perfect game. There's no perfect depth chart. Like, this team has had to adjust along the way. And they were putting themselves in a competitive situation. As a matter of fact, they were winning the game when Casey Thompson takes a hit and goes out of the ballgame. Now, the questions that exist about this team still exist. But what we found out is Casey Thompson's pretty good and pretty important. To this team, to this roster, to the chemistry of this team, to the mojo of this team, to the moxie of this team, yeah, Casey Thompson's that important because he got them in and out of situations that, Husker fans, quite frankly, take for granted. His mobility is better than advertised. His scheme IQ is high and elevating. His trust within the offensive coordinator's system, Mark Whipple's system, their communication has grown along the way. The connection has become deeper. And then the trust and reliance on the players. One of the big questions of this offensive unit is the fact that, wow, Casey, can they protect Casey enough to get him through the season? But what happens in trust is offensive linemen begin to understand what Casey's reaction to situation and circumstance is going to be. And they block accordingly. Like, they know where Casey's going to be. They know how much time Casey needs. Receivers know in this situation and circumstance, where does Casey need me and when? And that's just as important. Like, within this system, it's very important. Anthony Grant, being able to communicate with your quarterback about pass protection, maybe late adjustments for pass routes in space. Look, the throw to Travis Vokalek in the first half was a pretty top-level throw. Into traffic, past two defenders. Vokalek makes a great catch with the hands, gets vertical on the sideline, and scores 6. Missed extra point, scores 9-6. Another turnover opportunity, another situation. What this Nebraska team showed early was its ability to compete and its ability to fight. Look, let's be honest. This is not the typical Illinois football team, not in any way, stretch, or fashion. It is not. We can call them pretty good, but the truth is they walked into that building as the best defense in the country. And Nebraska had them on their heels. Nebraska even missed opportunities and had them on their heels. So let's not throw the baby away with the bathwater. Let's accept that there were some good things happening in that building and in that space. The fan base agreed. They were showing up. They were emotional. They were loud. The bench was loud. They were active. The coaching staff was communicating on a high level and at a high volume. But then what happens to new teams with new cultures and new players is that when chaos happens, they did not do the one thing that they need to do. A coaching phrase that I use all the time is, when chaos happens, slow down, and chaos ceases to exist. When chaos happens, slow down, and chaos ceases to exist. That is something I wish I could just have whispered to the remaining players on the field for Nebraska yesterday. Slow down. Do what you know. Don't panic. It'll be all right. That's there. We'll throw it to break. When we come back, before we go to break, I want to thank the folks from BetOnline. Again, there's some odds that are already out. That Illinois will host Michigan State with a 14-point advantage. The over-under is 43. Ohio State takes on Northwestern. Oh, boy. Plus 38. Plus 38. Actually, no, that's how that works. All right, when we come back, we'll talk more about what happened offensively, defensively, and in-game adjustments. We'll do all that on Locked On Huskers. Welcome back to Locked On Huskers, Locked On Go Big Red. After a 26-9 loss to what will be a top 15 Illinois team. And for the doubt mongers, there was full explanation and display of why this Illinois team is unique this year. They are athletic, they're big, they're strong, they play angry. And a part of the stuff that you want to talk about is where, when people look at overviews and you say, what happens? Well, Nebraska's a team that's trying to play physical at a new level. Illinois is already at that physical level. It's where they live. It's where they live. Thank the folks from BetOnline for doing this. Purdue +4 over Iowa. Another interesting little prop for the week, little odd for the week for the Big Ten folks. And there's some interesting numbers in play. Here's what we asked for. We asked for better line play. I don't want to get on the bash bandwagon, so I'll say this. They battled, but there are mistakes that even they would say they need to correct pretty quickly. I like the way they fought. We wanted Anthony Grant to be the factor that Chase Brown was. Like the Illinois run game is what Nebraska fans want their run game to be. And I don't think the gap between Chase Brown and Anthony Grant is that much. It's that great. I think the physicality of the Illinois offensive line, man, that's a group. Like they walked in together. They had their own theme song. But what we also found out is that when this offense utilizes its tight ends in the way that fan bases here have asked for, that Vokalek and Brewington can take a lot of pressure off whoever's playing quarterback for Nebraska. As a coach in the offensive phase, the easiest throw for quarterback to make is a quick throw and an open window between the hashes. Best way to take pressure off your quarterback with late blitzes and outside blitzes, throw the pressure to your tight ends. Send your tight ends to that space. Now, you can do that quickly or you can do that under delay, but the reality is when you use those folks, there was some success in getting those tight ends out to the outer third outside the numbers. I think you could do that with Casey Thompson. I'm not sure that you could do that with Logan Smothers and Chubba Purdy. At least not yet. And there has to be a matter of new quarterbacks being able to trust their offensive line so that the young quarterbacks can keep their eyes downfield. Like there's a matter of trust required for new quarterbacks coming in the game. Same thing for zone read. Smothers is the better runner, but he also needs to be able to trust the lineman to do the interior work so that when he gets to his mesh, his eyes can be in the right place and not behind him, not upfield, not any of that. He has to be able to trust those linemen up in front of him so that he can get his eyes to his responsibility and make decisions. And to be fair and to be true, the young quarterbacks, no matter which one it is, no matter who was out there, they're still young quarterbacks. They're going to need time to evolve and develop. Now, nobody in the Big Ten cares, especially nobody in the Big Ten West, specifically Minnesota or Illinois. Illinois saw, oh, we got a free little land. Let's go party. That's Big Ten football, especially when you're elite defensively. When you're elite defensively, you find a weakness and you attack it and you attack it and you attack it. Kudos to Illinois. Look, Witherspoon was exceptional. Now, I do want to say, I need to give an unofficial trophy to Minnesota's defensive secondary from linebackers on back. They are the grabbinest team I've ever. I'm surprised that Mickey Joseph didn't get flagged for calling this what it was. To quote the late great Vince Lombardi, grab. That's all. When you play physical defense as a part of your culture and a part of your personality, which is something that Illinois has earned over the course of this season, then you get a break or two because it looks comfortable. It's called comfortable movement. And officials will turn their eye to comfortable movement. When it becomes uncomfortable movement, officials' eyes are drawn to it more intently, and they tend to reach for their waist and that little yellow beanbag. The great scheme in capping, Trey Palmer. I'm sure Trey will tell you, no excuse. But that's the number one defense. There's some curiosity about what happens with the rest of the group. Does this week, as they go to battle on Tuesday at practice, does Tuesday open the opportunity for other receivers to step up and be included in the party? Can they put in enough work? Can they show enough aptitude? Can they do what's required to get them additional playing time against Minnesota at 11 o'clock on Saturday at Memorial Stadium? There's talent on the depth chart. But I can tell you, there was a lot of manhandling going on. Big, long, strong defensive backs and linebackers just There was some high-level rerouting for crossing routes. And you can tell, as a receivers coach, I can tell what the defensive backs are doing at practice because Illinois' receivers are grab, rub, peel. Like they're physical. The first touchdown to Juice Williams, that was a borderline. That's a penalty. But Nebraska has to get used to clearing those rubs and clearing those rear routes, clearing those mesh and get back into coverage and get into space. But that's part of the development of a next level team and a next level program. And those are steps that Nebraska can and I would expect will make in the future. But, as everybody knows, nobody cares in the Big Ten, get better. And I expect that the folks up at Memorial Stadium are going to put in some pretty interesting work this week. We'll go to break and we'll come back and we'll close out. We'll talk about some of the numbers and not numbers of the 26-9 loss against Illinois. I want to thank the folks from BetOnline. Wisconsin goes in as a 5.5-point favorite over Maryland. The over-under is 54, so expecting this to be a score fest and expecting an exciting game. Mark that one down as one that you pay attention to. But don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Again, thank the folks from BetOnline for what they do for us here at Locked On Huskers, Locked On Go Big Red, and as a part of the Locked On Sports Network. Michigan, after their successful weekend, will travel to Rutgers as a 26-point favorite over the Scarlet Knights, over under 46.5. Circle it. Have some fun with yourself. Again, if you've enjoyed the content here, put comments in the comment. You don't have to agree with me to put comments in. My skin's thinner than that. But if you have something good to say, you want to add a compliment, we greatly appreciate it. And then share this content, subscribe to make sure you get the content. We'll be pretty regular from this point, but you want to get the content, you want to get the alerts as well. So in order to do that, now in a week where the expectations were high, Nebraska made a definitive, purposeful attempt to get Anthony Grant going. Now, he didn't have a bad day. 12 rushes, 62 yards, 5 yards plus a carry. Casey Thompson gave you 5 yards per attempt. But that's okay until you compare it to Chase Brown's 32 and 152 and a touchdown. When Casey Thompson left the game, he was 7 of 15 for 172 yards. He had a long of 52 and a touchdown. That was against the number one defense, and that was at halftime. So for the two mistakes that were made, Casey had them on the hill. As a matter of fact, they were winning the game. They were winning the game. But when you get to the receiving numbers, and Anthony Grant is your leading receiver, we truly applaud the reemergence of Alante Brown. 2 catches for 47 yards. We love seeing Chancellor Brewington too. He had one for 52 yards. He had the long of the day. No, he had the second longest of the day. Travis Vokalek had the 1 catch for 56 and a touchdown. But it's the rest of the receiver group that I would imagine will take the challenge, will accept the challenge to have more input and be more of a factor. There were 7 targets to Trey Palmer for 1 completion for 1 yard. Brody Belt had an attempt. Folks want to point at the Ramir Johnson miss. It's a football play. Got to make it. Borkature with 1 catch. Marcus Washington with 1 catch. That's not going to do it in the Big Ten. It's not going to do it. Missed extra point. Look, figure it out. Like, that is a base play. and they'll figure it out. Pretty interesting stuff along the way. That Nebraska in the passing game was 11 for 24, 3 interceptions. One, of course, by Chopper Purdy, third quarter. 18 first downs for Illinois. Look, if we walked into this game Saturday and said Nebraska's defense is going to hold Illinois to 18 first downs, we would have all applauded and thrown confetti. But Nebraska only had 9. 9. And I'll have to do some investigation before the next podcast to find out how many of those were in the second half. Special teams wise, not really bothered by the rest of it. Third down conversions offensively, those numbers in the second half were not good. 2 of 12 for the game on third down. And then when you're playing from behind and you can't get the opposing offense off the field, Illinois had time of possession for 20 minutes in the second half. 20 to 10 in the second half. So a lot of times standing on the sideline trying to figure it out. Again, I do want to say defensively, Luke Reimers flashed and showed until he got nicked. I was impressed by Isaac Gifford and a couple of plays that he made. The big guys up front finally got it going later in the second half and made plays. Chris Kolarvik didn't hurt himself in his bid to be the full-time starter at that position that replaces Nick Heinrich. But they would tell you that it wasn't good enough across the board. So, Huskers will have a day. They'll have a day off tomorrow. And then it'll be me versus me day. It'll be Husker versus Husker day at practice. And they will turn their attention and focus onto the 5-3, 2-3 in the division, Minnesota Gophers, led by PJ Fleck. And I'm pretty sure that Husker fans would be pretty excited to get their turnaround at home against PJ Fleck and the Gophers. Again, thank you to the folks from BetOnline for letting us do this. I appreciate you for hanging out and enjoying this content. There'll be more tomorrow. We've got lots to talk about because we can look down the road and dive into the pocket of the Minnesota Gophers as they prepare to head to Lincoln, Nebraska, 11 o'clock kickoff next week at Memorial Stadium. I'm DP. This has been Locked On Sports, Locked On Go Big Red on the Locked On Sports Broadcasting Network. Go Big Red.